All right, let's get this little party started here. Welcome to this evening. This is a long time in the making. We're going to focus this obviously on meeting Black Label. First and foremost, let me forgive myself for this terrible sounding voice. I've just been on the heels of, believe it or not, of all things, pertussis. Yes, whooping cough. The childhood disease mostly. But anyway, my colleague, Dr. Krista, is also on with us. She's on the chat. She's lost her voice. We're not sure yet why. And no, we weren't together in the same room. So it's not my fault. But I can tell you that pertussis was very simple and easy to recover from. But then the lingering toxin, the toxin that it causes the inflammation in the trachea, is what we hear now. So forgive me. I will say, though, that I'm extremely excited to finally be able to talk about Black Label, the finished formulary, as well as to maybe even hint toward the near future, which is actually already in place around the custom formulations. But to start, I thought I'd give a sort of frame this up insofar as a little bit of the backstory, provides some context as to what got us here. So back in 2017, of course, I met the incredible Dr. Mansour Mohammed. We'd been in clinical practice for some time. Kashif Khan came along, and together we brainstormed around this novel concept of nutrients, which we named based on using genomics, the power of nutrigenomics, to inform a custom formula called nutrients, which is why, by the way, you still see up until now, the nutrients on your label, DNA inspired. It's been through many iterations. But anyways, at the time, the idea was this company was born onto this world with the idea that it would be DNA inspired ingredients. Very shortly after that, we realized this is really not the way to approach this. We should be first and foremost a reporting company and a testing company with nutrients as a sort of a sidebar, and that made a lot of sense. And then people just asked and really started demanding finished formulas. They were really seeing general successes, and friends and family were talking about how well they were doing on their custom formulas. So we ended up creating a whole line of finished formulas. But I couldn't sleep at night because these finished formulas, besides the fact that they were really well done and generally speaking, excellent. I would say I'm a stickler when it comes to, and so is Dr. Kostroman, when it comes to science and, of course, efficacy behind the raw materials in this industry. So I made it a life's mission about 10 or so years ago to travel the world, doing my due diligence into the raw material manufacturers that supply the consumer-facing brands. Give a bunch of examples momentarily. But I can tell you, it's led me to become the ingredient informer, among other things, in a clinical practice sense. I'll only use brands, of course, that use these IP patented evidence-based ingredients. And sometimes, by the way, it doesn't matter. Sometimes the generic are just fine. We'll talk about that. But it's been some time in travels through Japan, India, all over Malaysia, throughout, of course, all of North America, to come to understand and learn when it matters to have a patented ingredient. That is to say, that has got the majority of the human clinical trials behind it versus a generic one. Long story short, Dr. Kostroman and I have come up with a very strict criteria of ingredient selection, and have reformulated with very good justification. So part of this, of course, is the old story, DNA informed. That's a huge criteria. But the other is an acronym that goes like this, STEP, or STEP squared. STEP squared stands for safety and sustainability. We have to, of course, be first and foremost conscious about safety of product. The evidence has to be there around safety. Sustainability, the environment's a very important thing. Mother Earth, we don't take care of that. So the generally recognized as safe and Mother Earth, that's the first check in the box when we're using an ingredient. Transparency and traceability. So not only does the ingredient manufacturer have to have full transparency around their ingredients and provide all of their data and microbiome, of course, we have to know farm to finish. Where is this stuff coming from? We have to be able to trace it from beginning to end. Also, certification, whether it's NSF or informed choice certified, non-GMO, when possible, certified organic. That's all part of that traceability and transparency. And then we've got evidence and efficacy. So the double E, not quite the same thing. You can have specific evidence around something, but is it actually coming through and true to promise? Is it delivering on promise? So every ingredient that we offer is evidence-based and has been proving, through the scientific literature to confer health benefit. And we have monographs out of the wazoo that we're able to and very proudly will share. And then the double P is purity and potency. And I want to harp a little bit about the purity in a second, but potency is so huge. I am, as are you guys, incredibly tired of the idea of pixie dusting in the industry. That is to say, using an ingredient which may have that entire criteria as I just described it, safety, sustainability, transparency, traceability, efficacy, the evidence, and then purity. But the potency, like just let's use a little bit just to say that it's there in the product on the label. They're cutting corners. Of course, the idea around margins and profitability is top of mind. And there's always the business model to be conscientious about, of course, but potency is everything. So part of why we actually reformulated has a lot to do with all those things and potency. And that seems probably very commonsensical. But I want to harp on, as per the topic of this evening, or at least one of the subtopics, purity, because it's really important. I've also been, attending all of the biggest shows, expos, and scientific arenas around the nutraceutical world for a long time. And one of the most, I would suppose, of the last maybe 5 years, most common, popular trends in the industry within nutraceutical, vitamin, mineral, botanical sciences is the idea of free from. And we translate that into purity. So free from means essentially what is not on the label. Because let's talk about binders and fillers momentarily. So we are so proud now moving forward to be entirely free from things that are good for machines, but not for our bodies. So when it comes to lactose found in many products on the market, that's often used as a filler, cause digestive disruptions. We test for genes that ultimately show this is a problem for some people. Why would it be in our formulary? Bloating, diarrhea, gas, sometimes the very symptoms you're looking to avoid. The big one, magnesium stearate, that's a big one. This is commonly used as a lubricant. Once again, it's excellent for machines, and large runs of capsules allows the capsule to slide together quite easily. But a few studies show actually large amounts might actually affect the immune system or cause digestive disturbances. Titanium dioxide, I think that's amazing to be in your sunblock. Used sparingly. We want to get the vitamin D from the sun, 15 minutes exposure, full body. But then the titanium dioxide's fine topically, I think, but not internally, especially as some research shows that there's potential in an inflammatory process and cellular damage. Silicone dioxide, microcrystalline cellulose, which, by the way, I don't think is that bad. But at the end of the day, a lot of these things, artificial colors and dyes, propylene glycol, talc, sodium benzoate, cornstarch, they cause problems for some people. So the functional necessity for machines is there, but not for us. Non-nutritive, they are potential allergens and sensitivities and potential digestive concerns. So at the end of the day, the Step 2 Squared program is in place so as to allow us to have extremely stringent criteria as it pertains to the ingredient selection and how we choose what ends up in our formulas or not. So I thought I would run down the first 6 that we are releasing. And of course, the logic was which ones are the most popular, doing some of the, the most in sales because they are doing the most good. And ultimately, how have we reformulated these? So I'm going to start with the detox formula. Of course, we look at the GSTT1, GSTP1, GSTM1 genes, SOD2. Those are top of mind when it comes to how we reformulated. Excuse me. And the improvement really was in the precursor dose. Excuse me, to start with. And by the way, this is probably another 30 at least days. So it's a 100-day cough, and I've done at least 70. So I'm at least over halfway. Keep in mind, I want questions coming through today, guys. I want to be able to answer any and all of your questions. I want to be question heavy, but I'm going to start by going through our current formulary, and then I'll take your questions as they come. So the building blocks for glutathione, as we know, N-acetylcysteine, alpha lipoic acid, and selenium. The evidence suggested that on that note, we really improve upon our potency. So the addition of 100 micrograms of selenium, a whopping 500 milligrams of N-acetylcysteine, and to top off the alpha lipoic acid really better positions the product within therapeutic range. So again, even something like NAC, not that it wasn't doing something at the range we had it before, but the 600 or so to 1800 milligram range, incredibly safe, effective, therapeutic. So we didn't stop there. Milk thistle, it's an amazing botanical, a lot of evidence behind it. I love the guys out of Indina. I've been there. I've seen them. Dr. Appendino is incredible. They also make some other wonderful herbs, but their Silliphos milk thistles particularly incredible. But the idea of taking that out and really focusing on what we look at from a genetic perspective, that is to say, how can we actually upregulate that which the instructions in a null variant, or in some cases single copy variant, or the AG or AA GSTTP1 scenario, how can we actually upregulate glutathione itself? Well, if you look on PubMed, there's at least 32 plus studies that show glutathione may in some cases be effective and in other cases not. Here's the deal. What you have to do is get glutathione intracellularly beyond homeostasis. That's a tough thing to do with an ingredient. Not many do it. Cetria has the evidence behind it, the human clinical trials behind it. I will note again, there are probably some other glutathione products on the market that do equally as well. And there are a ton that don't. I think Cetria, which is the patented ingredient we're spending more money on formulating with, is a perfect example of there being that entire step 2 protocol in place. And that it does, in fact, have the proof that it delivers on promise. People feel much better when they take that vis-a-vis any other glutathione on the market, and that it goes into the cell where it's needed, that it actually gets intracellular beyond homeostasis. So that was the logic behind the increase in doses to achieve therapeutic range and potency for the precursors. And then, of course, the use of the Cetria, that's the heart magic, the IP, the patented ingredient with the safety efficacy of that particular formula. So we can't include everything. There's so many other things we could think of, but we booted out milk thistle, which is amazing for excess alcohol, even in some cases NAFLD. There's probably other better things, but Cetria and the combination of the precursors is what we did. So that's our patented hero ingredient. Next up, just going to pull it open, is the methylation optimizer. You'll see a significant difference in this one. And here's why. And it is a bit of a price increase. Again, some of these more than others, but this is worth every penny. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have purposely omitted B12 in any form or folic acid in any form. And that's because through our methylation pathway genomic assessment, we know, depending on your MTR or your SHMT1 and the variants of a bunch of others, you're going to want either folate, 5-MTHF, or quadrifolate, or in other cases, folinic acid. In some instances, we can use adenylcobalamin. In other cases, methylcobalamin is fine. So we kept them out, but you can order them on top of this formulary. So taking this B complex supplement, we reformulated with actives. So in this instance, there's no IP or ingredient that is patented, but actives in this instance, when we're trying to satisfy for this relay race of life, I like to think of the methyl CH3 group as a baton in a relay race. You pass that baton on. Of course, when you drop it, you're disqualified. An active reformed, if you will, kind of like our BCMO1 gene. You're not going to give somebody beta carotene. You're going to give them the proformed vitamin A or retinol. And in this instance, when they're having problems with methylation to begin with, many of these cofactors or coenzymes really need to be in their active form. So, for example, benfotiamine, riboflavin 5-phosphate, niacinamide, calcium pantothenate, P5P, pyridoxal 5-phosphate, biotin. We added chiroinositol in there, choline, and trimethylglycine, as opposed to the generic plain B vitamins. I think this is going to become one of our bestsellers. How do you really gauge that in what we're trying to accomplish? But people will feel the difference. There's been some groups out there, namely, for example, Soil or Genestra, Thorn, that have similar products to this. But I think we've done it the best. Enhanced bioavailability. It's going to translate to improved methylation support. Reduced conversion step. That's what it's all about, right? So the inactive B vitamins require all kinds of additional enzymatic processes within the body, regardless as to the methylation predisposition. So these active B vitamins skip these conversion steps, which can then be really beneficial for people with impaired enzymatic function. If anyone's out there that does, a NutriVal, you're going to really appreciate this. And anyone who's, frequently doing oats analysis, this is something I think you'll appreciate, again, besides whether somebody actually knows their methylation defects or not. So very targeted health benefits, and of course, reduced risk of overdose. Also, these are mostly water soluble, but of course, some of them, like B6, that can be problematic in some instances. And targeted health benefits. So even as it relates to our neurotransmitters, and executive function, mood, and behavior, some actives like P5P, and even the riboflavin 5-phosphate, which is the active form of B2, have very specific health benefits beyond their roles in methylation. So, for example, P5P is essential for neurotransmitter synthesis, across the board, and even energy metabolism. So super stoked about the methylation optimizer as well. Biggest difference there, once again, from inactive to active. That's the biggest difference. And there's no particular patented ingredients. There is really, honestly, next to no B vitamin manufacturers on the market that we've seen that do not have methylated B vitamins. That's another big thing. So again, we've taken them out purposely because we know people have a problem with this. We don't hypermethylate them. That's part of what we do in our search to determine what is right for somebody. And you can add these in after the fact. It's the easiest thing to do. Okay, next up. Oh, super excited about this one as well. I'm excited about them all. It's like choosing your favorite child. You can't do it. So we're going to talk about mitochondrial optimizer. All right, so we know we look at the superoxide dismutase 2 gene. And we know, of course, that is ultimately what is helping to protect the mitochondria. When that gene is dysfunctional, the free radical oxidative stress is abundant and the mitochondria are damaged. I wrote my whole first book on this, which is still very valid today. But the literature is very, very solid around SOD2, and the subfraction is, of course, not a dominance gene, sort of a hybrid heterozygote scenario. But the worst, of course, is the homozygote, where there's a 70% reduction. We really need some help boosting that particular enzyme function, superoxide dismutase. So what we did was obviously included manganese in there, but what is the end game in trying to protect them? By adding a very safe and effective antioxidant In this case, we added tocotrienols, and very specifically the tocogaya. This is the work of Dr. Chanda Sennett of Ohio State University, who did a lot of work. He was funded year over year by the NIH, like 25 or so $million. And what they found was, among other things, white matter lesion reversal, post-stroke patients, cardiovascular support. I'm just trying to pull up our old formula here to have it right in front of me to make these comparisons. But we also we see NAFLD reversal. It's a superb antioxidant. The four isomers, by the way, of the tocotrienols without the tocopherols, right? So those other four are not in the formula. So this is a significantly new and improved mitochondrial formula, even if we stop there. But that's not all, for fear of sounding like a late night infomercial. Oh, here we are, mitochondrial optimizer. So when we previously had the coenzyme Q10 and the increased dose of tocotrienols, of course, that's what we did. We reduced that and we put in the tocogaya. Remove the acetyl L-carnitine, not a bad choice. It was never a bad formula, but here's what we did. We thought to ourselves, again, what's the point here? Protect the mitochondria, increase the superoxide dismutase function. That's manganese driven. So ubiquinol's there. Hanukkah, don't want to change that. We've always done that. Didn't really need such a heavy dose. That was sort of a bit of an overkill. So back to potency, clinical trials are in place for obviously the reason of science, safety, efficacy, but also dosing. Dosage are great for most people at the 100 milligrams, and it's doing its job to protect the mitochondria. We're not talking in this instance about a cardiovascular support formula or somebody who happens to be on statins. That might be a different story. But what else can we do with mitochondria? We can divide it. We can multiply it. And Mitsubishi puts out the best PQQ, pyrroloquinone quinine, on the market, pyrroloquinone quinone. And this in the literature is shown to multiply, divide mitochondria. So we're activating the SOD enzyme. We're protecting the mitochondria with the tocotrienols at the right dose and ubiquinol at the right dose. And we're multiplying the mitochondria. By the way, again, not an inexpensive or cheap consideration. PQQ is a very expensive ingredient. And we doubled, in this case, it is important to note, doubled the standard or average dose of PQQ on the market. Typically, it's 10 milligrams, and we're formulating with 20. Okay, did I skip over one? Yeah, female E. Actually, I'm going to save that one until last, female E, the estrogen dominance formula. And I'm going to pop into sleep optimizer number 5. So, this is one of those where I think that we were sort of caught in a bit of a gunshot approach. Wasn't a bad idea. Obviously we look at sleep in so many different ways with the genomic assessments. And there's so many ways in which you can approach it. Sedation, melatonin, pseudohormonal discrepancy, obviously in that instance. There's a difference between helping lull somebody asleep in that sort of sedative approach as there is to keeping them asleep. So reformulating this wasn't easy. But we think we've come up with, this is number 4. We also have the BDNF optimizer. So I missed that one. So we have 3 more to go here, and then I'll definitely take questions. But when it comes to sleep, one of the most important things to do is not just, of course, help somebody fall asleep, but we want to help make sure that they stay asleep. And that was our objective here. So I've always been a huge fan of California poppy. I'm curious to know if there's anyone else out there this evening who is as well. With the opioid epidemic, most of us are familiar with the idea that that concept, but particularly mu3, mu4, is very addictive when we're engaging those receptors. Just looking our old sleep formula. Here we go. California poppy has a 5-HTT LPR agonistic activity with a mu1 and mu2 selective activity exclusively, it will not cause any form of addiction. Which is why we kept it in there. So that's why that's there. We upped the dose a little bit though. GABA is one of those things where I think it's a great litmus test, as does Dr. Kostroman, for the individual who might have hyperpermeability or leaky gut. It's large, shouldn't really bypass the gut membrane to cause a sedation. We have other problems. So we took that out for that reason. And the holy basil is a very nice, sort of neuro sedative. So we kept that in there. And the ashwagandha as an adaptogen, we kept that in there as well. I think that more and more folks are probably having problems, and we see it in our assessments due to riding high cortisol. If anyone's out there doing a Dutch analysis, you're going to see this reverse scenario where cortisol is slumped in the morning and high in toward the evening. So the adaptogens are incredibly essential as well. So reduced a little bit on the hypnotic, added a little bit of the front end adrenal adaptogen, took down the sedative. And here's the biggest change in our hero ingredient is suntheanine. So we had 100 milligrams of theanine. We've increased the theanine to 200 milligrams. And I say it's a hero ingredient because in this instance, another perfect example of patented ingredient. So once again, a patented ingredient is an ingredient where the company, the raw material supplier, has a patent around the extraction process or technology. They also have done all the human clinical trials and have the safety and evidence and have spent a lot of money to prove all this out. Are there theanines on the market that work as well as suntheanine? Maybe, but they're not with the science. So again, this instance, it was worth the money to spend behind this because not only is the evidence there, of course, the whole step 2 protocol, safety, sustainability, transparency, traceability, efficacy, the evidence, purity, potency. Again, we've increased it to another 100 milligrams to 200 milligrams. They've done at least over 200 human clinical trials, 5 of which have been on children. So it's just uber safe, some of which have been on ADHD. And what this does, of course, is increase alpha wave activity in the brain. And that's what's going to help establish us for a decent night's sleep. So it's a non-sedative. It's not a neurological tonic. It's going to help you enter into a deeper, more restful sleep, as at the same time increasing your attention, focus, alertness, concentration the next day. So alpha wave inducement, sleep studies, sleep architecture improvement, no side effects. So this is a beautiful, you're not going to wake up the next morning feeling hungover. There's no melatonin in this, very safe. The California poppy, we've increased slightly again, that mu1, mu2 receptor agonistic activity exclusively, plus the 5-HT LPR activity for the serotonergic perspective. It's a beautiful formula. We're very proud of that. All right, BDNF. Hop over to BDNF, and then we've got the female E. If I can just find our previous BDNF formula. So in this instance, here we go. In this instance, BDF, was always relatively well formulated. We just found that most people, because let me start with the science around the patented ingredient that we have decided to keep in. Coffee berry extract, once again, human clinical trials around upregulating BDNF, which is precisely what we're trying to do. So brain-derived neurotrophic factor, upregulation, 3 human clinical trials that show this works. It just ended up being that we found that most people who supplemented with our BDNF formula, fueled by the BDNF upregulation of the coffee berry extract, were also benefiting from bacopa and magnesium threonate as well. So we added a therapeutic dose of both of those things to the formula for a relatively small cost. So we all know that magnesium threonate bypasses the blood-brain barrier. There's some pretty good evidence of BDNF upregulation. And Bacopa, in our opinion, Dr. Kostroman and I, there are others out there like vinpocetine and some interesting, nootropics, but Bacopa is very safe, effective, and a lot of people swear by it. So what better than to add this as a complement? So the coffee berry is really still the hero. In this instance, it is a patented version versus the coffee Arabica we were using before. The dosage remains the same at 100 milligrams, but we added 200 milligrams of magnesium threonate and 400 milligrams of Bacopa, and it is a beast for BDNF upregulation. So people actually, one of the things you want to know is with your patients is you want to know that they're not only, the ingredients are indicated, but that you're also having a sensory experience. And so people are coming back to us on this and saying, like, this is experiential. I actually feel sharper. I remember better. And we know about BDNF and that, it's when you can increase it, your hippocampus activity first and foremost on fMRIs are what are going to be triggered, and memory is going to ensue within short order. So, oh my gosh, my voice can hold up just a little bit longer. Last but not least, female E. Excuse me. You spoke too soon. Okay, so once again, what is our focus on female estrogen dominance? We look at all kinds of components to the hormonal pathway. How we're transitioning progesterone into estrogen, downstream its metabolites, and then downstream how you're detoxifying. But the end game when you are estrogen dominant is really to help not stop that flow, that's impossible, but mitigate it. So the polyphenols are very important, remain so. That's why we kept the resveratrol in there. The diindolylmethane may have been a slight bit heavy. We didn't go too low, but we also didn't, overdo it. The addition, though, of calcium deglucarate, which is the calcium, if anyone noticed, is the stuff that's really helping to bind excess estrogen and help eliminate it out of the system in an estrogen dominant individual. The IP hero in this instance is really the Tiavigo. And this is a Thio product. So epigallocatechin gallate is, as we know, a type of catechin, very potent antioxidant, very, a lot of health benefits, anti-inflammatory, anti-carcinogenic, has a huge role in the cardiovascular system, obviously. But the biggest difference between standard EG-CG and this Tiavigo that we're using lies in the purity and the potency as a 94% extract. I should, sort of also throw this in. So much of what people say is in a product, like for example, the theanine, it doesn't come from green tea. That's prohibitively expensive. It comes from a fermentation process. That's the patented thing that I was sort of alluding to earlier. Same with EG-CG, in this case does come from green tea, but how you extract it to a point where it's 94% is patentable. So anyway, the role of this in similar compounds in supporting, estrogen balance in this formula is really interesting. It's beyond the oxidative stress. A lot of studies actually show these catechins help to influence the estrogen metabolism and modulate the activity of the enzymes and even maybe upregulate the genes involved in this particular pathway. So at the end of the day, what we did was we moved to a patented ingredient with proven potency and the science behind it that's going to deliver on promise. So when it comes to epigallocatechin gallate, and when you're thinking of your male patients and prostate as well, think about this patented ingredient. There is no substitute in our minds. All right. So the other incredible news is, imagine that we were to be able to take all of these siloed formulas, the 6 I've described, which again are the BDNF, and that's the whole fruit coffee powder and the addition of Bacopa, the detox optimizer, the Cetria glutathione game changer, Female E, we just talked about that with the EGCG and some of the other modifications. Methylation optimizer, all bioactives, no patents necessary, but all bioactives, non-conversion necessary without methyl Bs like folate and B12 that can be detrimental to some folks. Mitochondrial optimizer, let's protect them, tocotrienols, coenzyme Q10, the right type, ubiquinol reduced form, but also let's divide them using the necessary PQQ. And then the sleep optimizer, let's get the right dosages of these things, but let's also use the evidence-based sun-theanine, and let's double the dose because that's where people are going to see the difference. Imagine being able to take all of these things, and let's just say, for example, an individual needed all of these things at the right dose specific to them or their basal metabolic rate. That is what is real. We've done it. It's called Black Label. It's custom. So these are the formularies that are the standalones, no longer branded with nutrients and all this confusing stuff, DNA, better, more improved. But we will very shortly be able to offer you, and by the way, this is available April 1, all this stuff. Eventually, and soon around the corner, we'll be able to offer customization at the right basal metabolic rate standard dosage for your patients. And to choose from all of these ingredients. And let's just say, for example, you love the detox optimizer, but you know what? You just aren't sure that your patient would do well from selenium for whatever reason, or you told them eat 3 Brazil nuts instead. You can take it out. You can modify dosages when there's obviously the practitioner level compliance and training in place. So that's right around the corner. This is, you know, the original nutrients on steroids. We're super pumped about it. So as we're seeing here in the chat notes, we'll have this Core 6 Black Label formulary available April 1st. The pricing, there's a wholesale pricing and a retail pricing for each of those. I'm not sure if we should be throwing those up on screen, but we have them. And at this point, I thought I'd be faster than that. But anyways, at this point, I'd love to field any questions anyone has. Dr. Kostroman's available to answer those questions as well by text. Her voice is actually, believe it or not, a little bit worse than mine. So fire away. Do we have any questions so far? In the replay that, you know, we'll be providing everybody, of course, by email, the wholesale and bulk discount pricing for anyone interested will be there. So maybe we have a lot of individual recorders on and people plan to watch later because I don't see questions, but I'm super pumped about this. Long time in the making. We've done it. We have incredible partners. That is to say, manufacturers that, you know, custom compound these things for us without the binders and fillers, so the full free from. And we've just gotten started, meaning we are going to upgrade and supercharge any and all of the formularies that we currently have, and probably introduce some additional ones based on the new introduction of some of the genomics that we've included over the last year or so. So thanks for tuning in. I wish everyone the best of health and luck. And again, take advantage of the wholesale discounts because they're pretty steep. Ordering them in bulk for your practices. These things are going to just fly off the shelves. I don't know it, or I don't think it, I know it. So we will talk to you next time. I think, is there one question here? How will an individual basal metabolic rate be determined? Great question. So there's all types of standardized ratios out there. So taking into consideration height, weight, gender at birth, and age, we are condensing all of these numbers to essentially spit out a BMR surrogate. So of course, we're not doing a DEXA analysis on these individuals. That's impossible. But the big but is if you have this information for the custom, formulary, you can adjust dosages up or down within minutia. So for somebody, you know, putting in just sort of quick and dirty information, if you will, age, height, weight, gender at birth will ultimately yield a surrogate We all have different basal metabolic rates, the speed at which we are going to essentially metabolize a lot of these ingredients out of our system. And this automatically, we've set this to automation, calculates the recommended dose for the individuals on the custom side. Of course, I've just mentioned on the pre-formulated formulary side, they're all static doses. But that's how we ultimately get to a basal metabolic rate. It's algorithmic numbers. So that's that. Okay. Does the compound take into account the DNA co-info? If what you're referring to is, does it take into account the individual's credentials or their vitals? That's on the consumer, or that's on the practitioner side, of course. Can you clarify that question, Abigail? Oh, I think I know what she means. So yeah, so if on the custom side, again, if the individual has a problem with methylation, then the practitioner is going to click a box. This is, I'm speaking a little cart before the horse here. It's all been done, but this is how it'll work. You'll choose those areas for which the individual is problematic. So let's say detox, estrogen, methylation, and it will co-blend into a single formula. And if you want to take any single ingredients out of that co-blend or adjust doses of any of those ingredients, that's possible. And then eventually also, which is in place, yes, I think to your point, you're able to use the DNA company TXT file, as it were, or all the information that populates your genetic SNP variants, indel, and CNV variants, and actually populate a complete custom formulary. If you're a practitioner, you have autonomy to make those changes. If you're a patient, of course, you don't. And to B's point, the Core 6 formularies are available April 1st. The custom compounding portion, the Black Label line, will be launched May the 1st, which is the complete customization of that formula. Okay. Well, I think we can come to a close, and we are going to be talking about this a lot more. So we invite your questions, and we will address them, and we'll have this replay available via email. Thank you, everybody, for being excited about Black Label. We can't wait to deliver it for you. David's asking, will there be a minimum amount needed to be ordered for custom? To be able to achieve the wholesale price, I believe that breakpoint is 10, if I'm not mistaken. B will correct me. These numbers are relatively new. The whole program is relatively new. But for example, detoxification formula at retail will be $59. Wholesale will be $50. But if you buy more than 10, you'll get a further discount. And David's also saying, I believe white label was going to be a minimum of 3 months worth, depending on the programs. That's getting into the weeds of the Black Label custom program, which I won't address in this particular webinar.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to touch on the pricing for the 6 core formulas. For the core 6, there's no minimum order quantity, so you'll be able to access the wholesale pricing with no minimum order quantity. And then Bryce mentioned that we do have a bulk discount. So if you do want to order 10 or more, you'll get an additional 10% off your order of 10 or more bottles of the wholesale pricing. Yeah, and like Bryce was saying, that for the 3 months worth, that more applies to our DNA blueprint programs and some of our remote clinic programs that we have going on.
Yep. Individuals, Barbara, can order the formulary. Practitioners, currently are the only ones that can modify the custom, and eventually, everyone can be ordering custom as well. The only thing is you can't modify as an individual or a patient. You can't modify your formulary without overseeing or having some oversight by a practitioner. Cool. Will these be available through FullScript or Doctor Supplement Store? I don't see a vision for that at this point. That might be one day, but we'll have a current, online portal that will support this ongoing. As far as I know, there's no future vision of it being on FullScript or any sort of supplement store. And you kind of currently we don't want that to be honest. So thanks, David. Appreciate the well wishes. All right, thanks everybody. I really appreciate it. Janet's asking, sending healing thought. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. I can't wait till this voice comes back, as of course most of us talk for a living. All right, Black Label, all the way. Wish you guys all the best of health and wellness. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. We'll be sending out a replay link shortly, and then any other information you might need to get even more excited about Black Label. Thank you.